And welcome to Vic Akers Wonderland. I am joined, as always, by Lottie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to meeting these two guests that are beside us. First and foremost, it's nice to see you back with us, Gee. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's really exciting to be back with you all again, so thank you.
And we also have a newcomer, and I think we're best to talk. Let her explain herself a little bit more. Maisy.
Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. Just the same as you, massive fan of the women's football, but a bit more of a rival fan compared to you all.
No, absolutely.
So we are here to talk about the England versus Haiti game. I think the best to start off with was that starting 11. Was there any surprises for you at all?
I think for me, the starting 11 was pretty much how I probably would have expected it. I think maybe if I was going to say the most surprising one was probably Chloe Kelly starting, because I probably would have thought Lauren James could have perhaps started, just because I think Lauren James has been absolutely outstanding. I think the back line, the goalkeeper was the exact same as probably as expected, because we have seen it a lot more in friendlies and quite recently. I think the midfield is pretty much set with to Kira Walsh and Stanway. So I think it was more, if we was going to change anything, it was going to be that right wing role, because that's where the more rotation has happened under Serena in the last 5 games, I'd probably say, under us. So it was going to be a more of that toss of a coin between Chloe Kelly and Lauren James. But I can understand her wanting to start Chloe Kelly just because she has got that bit more experience, and Lauren James, she's only just come through into the England squad, so maybe it's just a little bit more protection because she's still only very young. But I think it was great to see her coming off the bench.
Gee, was there any thoughts on you for the starting 11? Just to give you an idea, it was Mary Earps, Millie Bright as centre back, with Jess Carter as her partner. Alex Greenwood was playing left back. Lucy Bronze was playing on the right. Then you had Georgia Stanway, Kira Walsh, Ella Toone, and then Leslie Russo, Chloe Kelly, and I'm missing the player here.
Lauren Hemp.
Lauren Hemp, thank you. I knew I was going to miss someone. Yes, as a start.
I believe that's one of Gee's favourite players. I was waiting for her to say it.
I knew I was going to cock it up. Sorry, go on, Gee.
No worries at all. It wasn't so much of the starting 11 that came out. It was more the positioning between Jess Carter and Alex Greenwood, because naturally in the obviously WSL, Alex Greenwood would be in the middle now, and Jess Carter on the wing really. So when we started and they positioned themselves the opposite way around, I thought this is actually. At first, I was like, not sure about this, but then obviously Greenwood, what she could do with her set pieces, I thought they worked really well, to be fair, and that was the only thing that surprised me really. I thought Daly would have started, but it's probably so hard to pick between the three of them. It's not a shock to see any of them start at any point now, I don't think.
I think Lottie has a lot to say on Rachel Daly and whether or not she was starting. So I think that's the best.
No, I'd always back Rachel Daly to start. A little bit disappointed, but again, got to see Leslie Russo, so it's kind of not a disappointment. One of the Arsenal girls did get onto the pitch. As you know, Matt, I just called you Adam there. I was hoping Lottie would be paired up with Millie Bright, but it was a dream. Let's put it that way. I think one of the strangest things for me with this lineup was we've got players that are regularly off the bench starting, and it's just a bit weird. to see like Ella Toone, Chloe Kelly, and Russo starting, because obviously we normally have Mead, and Kirby, and Leah Williamson in that lineup as well, but unfortunately they're not there. I'm still kind of devastated by it, but it is what it is at this point. Other than that, I was a bit underwhelmed, put it that way. I'm not too confident in this team at the moment, purely on the basis we haven't had a goal from open play in 4 games. So that's what I'm waiting for, is a goal, and then I can sort of relax.
So just before we go to the goal, there was plenty of opportunities. It was very much a game of end to end in that first 20 odd minutes. There was a bit of a confusion to begin with. Haiti managed to get the ball within the first 2 minutes and really caused a bit of a scare and nearly scoring the opener. How much would it have meant to Haiti, knowing it's their first ever tournament going into this and being able to score? You've seen it today with the Philippines, that they've gone and scored their goal. They ended up winning the game, which we'll cover in another pod soon.
This is absolutely massive for them personally. I mean, it's their first World Cup since 1984 in any form of international football. I think they were absolutely incredible, considering that, I think, if I remember right, they're the second lowest ranked. I might be wrong, but they absolutely did brilliantly. Unfortunately, they did lose a player to those 3 dreaded letters that we absolutely hate on this podcast. Hopefully, she'll have a speedy recovery. But other than that, I think Haiti were absolutely brilliant. They kept us on our toes. They didn't let us settle down, and that's what I expect from an underdog team.
They gave a real physical game as well, which I was so pleasantly surprised, because sometimes, without meaning to be disrespectful, you see a name, you know you've never played them before, you know that they just about qualified or they haven't been in it for so long as well. You do sort of, your mind in women's football does go to that big thinking, oh, you're going to score a good few goals, so we're going to start off really well. And it was actually quite refreshing for it to be a tense game and really be on the edge of your seat, worrying about their attack, because they were just so good, weren't they? And of course we were a little bit off, but it's going to be natural. It's the first game. I think everyone has been a little bit off their game, minus like 2 teams that so far in the first round. So yeah, they could be so proud, and I think they'll do really well going forward as well. They've obviously got such a youthful team. I think they said the oldest player was like 27. Which is just not natural, is it, to hear that? So for them as well, this experience while they're so young, I don't know if you were going to say it there, but they had a good lot of teenagers in the team as well, which is, for a first tournament, still being a teenager is massive for their country. So yeah, it was a good surprise to watch that kind of game. Of course, we won, so that's the main part.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you are saying, and I think you do need to look at it as in, like, you look from the Euros where we was just winning every single game. We kind of needed something where we needed to know where our weaknesses are going forward to develop as a team, knowing that we are still very young and we're still quite inexperienced in some kind of in some places, because we've got some couple of teams in there, and I think Haiti, they are going to come out with loads of confidence to go, oh look, we lost, but only by a penalty against the team who's won the Euros, and I think they was very defensively brilliant. As you've already mentioned, very, very physical as well. And I think if they continue to build how they're doing, there's no reason as to say why they couldn't get into another World Cup or eventually again in the future.
Is this the other part of it as well, is that they're looking to go beyond? They also had the playoffs over in New Zealand just before the tournament as well, so that they probably, most of that team, I believe, actually was picked for that playoff spot, so they're a little bit more used to playing similar sort of time zones compared to the other 3. Is that sort of a little bit of leg up for Haiti in this tournament?
Probably. You know, it's an adjustment for, well, as well, we've been there for the longest as well. Although we're obviously not used to those sort of times, you do have to adapt. And you can't. It's the same as, you know, if we're at home, we're going to be pretty much perfect and adapt, and everyone else has to manage it as well. I don't think it can ever really be. It's not really. I guess there's some sort of advantage if you're from that, obviously Australia and New Zealand have it the best. But that's what tournament football is about. Is what World Cups are for. Those things shouldn't really matter, I don't think, too much.
I agree. Maybe that, I think probably, especially the first game, you might be a tiny bit leggy, but I think when you are a professional footballer, you do need to quickly adapt to them time zones. I know some people might take a little bit longer than others, but that's when you'd think that that's where you see the support there from the backroom staff, you know, to try and give that extra little bit of support. Because I think from what I've been reading, I think it was, I feel like it was Beth England. She was struggling with the time zones from what I've been reading as well, and that was why she hasn't been being used, especially in that closed door game against Canada.
I think it's really interesting what both of you said. I think with the time zones, I think it's also, you've got to remember, I know the Australian players would have returned home earlier, but most of them, like key players like from WSL, from France, and the Swedish leagues, they all travelled over as well. So although they've had a bit longer of that time zone adjustment, they're probably more used to it. To be fair, that they still have it. I don't think it's just allocated to us, if that makes sense, Matt. I mean, I think there's about a 2-3 hour difference between New Zealand and Australia as well. From what I can remember when I was down there in 2016. So I think it's a case of as what Maisy said, is what support they have from the backroom staff and how they're managing their time.
So we'll go on to the penalty incident now. Bit of fun and games we've had at this tournament. So first and foremost, because Gee and Maisy haven't been on our show before, how have you enjoyed the VAR calls and actually knowing what's going on? Or has it been a bit of an issue for you?
I think they're quite strange. I don't know, like you see something like in rugby where you announce it, but you do see it in other sports, but I've never been used to seeing it in football. So is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I know some people may have differ, but I'm just kind of one of them as to say, right, it's a penalty or it's not. We don't really need to hear the announcement unless we was going to get the explanation, say, right, we're having a penalty because of a foul on Alessia Russo or a foul on Chloe Keller. If we had that bit of explanation, I think it probably would have worked a little bit better, but I think it just looks more odd for me more than anything, just because it's something I'm not used to.
I think as well, because when it first happened, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. We get to hear from the ref what she's thinking. But obviously she just came out and was like, my decision is penalty. And that was it. It's like, well, we could see that. We could read that on the screen. I thought it was going to be like, you know, not go into too much detail because obviously it's going to waste time. But at least say because of a foul, like Maisy was saying, because of a foul or because of this and that, or I think she did say handball, but it was just like a little bit more to it would be, because it's going to happen. There will be a time, maybe not in this World Cup, but there will be a time where something is tricky and it will need a bit more than a couple of words. But hey, if it's going to improve things, if it's going to make things more clear and it gets better as well, and we can understand the reasonings, I'm all for it, rather than these awful decisions that we potentially could see.
What about the added time that we have seen in men's? Was that something that you weren't expecting to carry on, or was it something that you quite thought was quite a good idea to carry on?
I think it's more, for me, it doesn't really matter how much time I'm finding now is added on, because players are still going to do their things to waste even more time. I honestly think we should be actually stopping the clock when things are happening instead. So we do play, because even if you know, I think, what do we have, 9 minutes, I think, in the first half, and then 4 in the second, which is just ridiculous. It's normally the other way around, isn't it? But you think, well, how much of those minutes are we actually still playing football in that time? You know, and bringing on subs like in the last minute, that's still wasting time on time we don't play. So I don't I'd rather they stop the clock like in rugby, so you do play the amount of time you're supposed to, rather than have 10, 12, whatever, 15 minutes potentially added on, and still not be playing those minutes and gaining the time back.
I agree with that completely. I'm all for stopping the clock just because realistically, like when we're seeing added time on, sometimes you even look at it and go, where's that added time come from? Like you do get confused. Like sometimes you might think, wow, how's it only 2 minutes when this has happened? And sometimes you think 12 minutes, where's these 12 minutes suddenly appeared from? And I think for me, as you've said, G, stopping the clock, it gives you the most accurate time. Because I actually did see some like statistics where because we don't stop the clock on average, if for instance we didn't have that additional time, we'd be only playing around 60-70 minutes worth of football.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's actually insane.
So we'll go on to the penalty then. It was a handball. VAR said it was a penalty, and it was the correct decision. Georgia Stanway steps up, takes the penalty, and we haven't had very much luck for penalties in World Cups. For those that don't know, England went through 2019 edition over in France, and Nikita Paris took a penalty. She missed. Steph Houghton missed a penalty against the US. It was, I think the record is actually about 4 or 5 penalties, and that goes back over France 2019. Was it sort of a relief, to see that the VAR actually looked back at it and saw that the goalkeeper was off the line, then getting the review? Just your thoughts in general on the whole lead up to Georgia Stanway and the penalty.
Obviously, we want VAR to be doing the right things. She has a very good record for penalties, to be fair. So I wasn't nervous when I saw her step up, but when it got saved, I thought, oh no, oh my God, no. It was one of those where if the goalkeeper doesn't come off her line, it might still go in, but it was the perfect height for her to still reach it, wasn't it? So yeah, it's always good. I don't really remember the ref explaining much to it in the men's game. Just to quickly say, obviously they emphasize it quite a lot before the penalty is taken of don't come off your line because we will redo it. But I don't remember, I might be wrong, but I don't remember her really speaking to the goalkeeper about it. She just kind of went, just take it again. But then of course a relief and bravery from Georgia Stanway to put it in almost the same area again the second time round, and obviously tucked it away, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, that's where the referee could have done a tiny bit better, because realistically, she should have been reviewing where the goalkeeper was standing at that moment in time, because she wouldn't have just magically just come off the line pretty quickly. So she must have been off the line. Do you get what I mean? She must have been off the line before the penalty was to be taken, and that's when the ref should have, before she started to go, right, go onto your line, because we're not going to be taking the penalty till you're in that right position. And I think for me, there could have been a bit more. The referee herself could have been a lot more vocal in that place, and then it still took what, a minute or two for us to get the penalty retaken. But I think Georgia Stanway, again, she is a fantastic penalty taker. I think she's fantastic with a scoring altogether. So it wasn't necessarily Georgia itself I was morely worried about, but I just think that's where the referee and even potentially VAR could have done a little bit more at that moment in time.
Both of you are absolutely spot on. I mean, I've got to give some credit to the Haitian keeper. She was absolutely brilliant through that game. It was a good save, but she came off her line, so we've got to retake it. Thankfully, it went in this time. I think apart from the goal, I think the bit that made my heart melt was when the camera zoomed in on Stanway and Kira Walsh, and she was saying to Kira, Falia, and it just absolutely melted my heart. As an England fan, not an Arsenal fan, because they don't all play for Arsenal, but I think that's one of the key things for me, and how united as a team we are. They're still working for Leo, and that's amazing.
Was there anything that made you think that, Macy, you made it a point earlier to show that there is some weakness in this side. A lot of it seems to be defensively more than attacking, although this is continuing the run of games that we haven't had a goal in open play yet. Is that still worry that defence and midfield, or is it sort of everyone has to gel together again?
I think for me, Serena's trying to find a balance in a kind of way, just because we've had so many injuries. Fran Kirby, she is a fantastic creator, and I'm not a Chelsea fan. I know none of us here are Chelsea fans, and I think Fran Kirby is a main character there in that midfield, who's able to create them fantastic assists, who is able to create the goals, and I think we're missing that kind of person there, that more vocal person, because Ella Toon, as much as it's her first World Cup, she's very, very knackered. She's played every single game for Manchester United. Even the cup games, she was playing all of them. She's played all the England games, so I think she's absolutely exhausted. And yet, I think again we've seen it in that game against Haiti, and maybe a lot of people was expecting her to be a bit like Frank Kirby may have put that tiny bit of pressure on. So I think missing the key players, Leah Williamson as another one, that kind of progressive centre back. I think Leah Williamson is absolutely incredible, and I think as well as gelling in that back line. Alex Greenwood, I think she's fantastic. I know she's played in the centre back more for club, but I think she's great already in that left back. And I just think there's something there in the centre backs where they're not. I think they're a bit. How can I say? A bit too familiar in a kind of way, where it's a bit too similar. Sorry, where they kind of not have similar play, and I think sometimes that doesn't really help each other out. And on top of that, Millie Bright's coming back from an injury. That's not always going to be helpful either. The front line, it's still quite very young. Lauren Hemp, she's a fantastic player, fantastic speed. Alessia Russo, after her move with Arsenal, she's going to come out with loads of confidence too. I think she's very good at bringing herself back, but the problem is because there's no one there to really help her create. She's having to create for herself, and that doesn't really do much, because the wingers don't really create for the striker, who we started, because Chloe Kelly's the same. She's more of a player who cuts in and shoots rather than assists to the striker. So I think it's more, for me, that the way that we were set up is we needed to gel in certain areas, but I think in other areas they didn't really complement each other either.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's in football, and like with the Euros, we played the same team pretty much every single game. They were, the games leading up to it was, you could guess the team sheet because it was going to be the same people. And now, I think they got a lot of criticism, to be fair, the other day, where you think about the main spine of the team, half of it is already gone. You've got Mary Earps at the back, with Kira Walsh in the middle, but Millie Bright she hadn't had barely any minutes since March, they said. And then to go to Australia in the heat and everything else, to then be the captain and have that extra responsibility when you haven't even played football for months. She was obviously going to be a bit ropey, alongside Jess Carter, who I don't know I can't remember if she's ever been partnered with her yet. And in such a big game, these things do sort of matter. And as well, with the wingers, they quite often will swap sides. And it kind of got to a point where you thought, come on, girls, you're both not having any luck here. Do it. Just swap across. And they never really did, which was probably the one thing I thought was a bit strange in the game, whether they didn't feel confident enough to do it, or whether they've been told to stay where they are. But from seeing it before, it's obviously, you can't compare it to the Euros. Things are going to be different. But you're so used to seeing them switch and rotate and thinking, oh, she's over there now, and she's actually putting a good ball in, and they didn't do it. So I think all in all, they tried to play like the safest option, and it was a bit flat. But what else can you do? There's not much really you can bring on at the bench at this point. I think it's the strongest 11 potentially, minus Rachel Daly, but then you have to change the number 10, I think, with Lauren James going in there instead. So it is a bit more of a system change, whereas with the Euros, we could actually make influential changes that would happen straight away. I think with our subs now, we have to be quite planned at what we're doing and maybe change the formation a little bit to match them and make everyone play and perform better together.
She actually makes a really good point about Lauren James. I think the main question for me, if we did bring her on, we did give her that Fran Kirby role, would she be creative enough to actually fill those boots? Because experience wise, sorry, I do apologise. There's a massive difference between Lauren James and Fran Kirby.
Yeah. I think she would suit it really well. Even in the warm-up games, when she's come on and been in the number 10, she's played so much better for me than what she does on the wing. I don't think she's obviously very creative and ridiculously skillful, but I don't think she's that kind of player that's going to be up and down the wing. And so I think she needs to be in the pocket, and obviously Righty is so desperate for her to play as well.
I know, of course. You know, Ian Wright is a massive women's football fan. I do agree with you there, Jay. I mean, I want to see it tested, but I don't know at this point if it's the right time.
Yeah, that's it.
With that being said, England did bring on 2 substitutes. Alessia Russo came off for Rachel Daly, as Lottie was really happy about that. And Lauren James went on for Lauren Hemp. Was that kind of one of the worries? Was that, considering usually you have the 5 subs, but Serena has only used 2 out of the 5 that have been allowed?
The thing is with the substitutes, especially being only 1-0 up, you need to be careful, because if for instance we was 2, 3, 4-0 up, I think Serena probably would have made more substitutes. Or if we was gonna or if it was a knockout game and we was gonna go to extra time, I think that's when she would have probably made more subs. But I think knowing that it was the first game, knowing at the fact that realistically we do need the 3 points, we need to get off with the winning start, I think that's probably why I think she probably only made the 2 subs. It would have been probably nice to see more players coming on, have a bit more of a chance. Lauren James, I think she was absolutely superb coming off the bench. She did really put that bit of oomph, I'd like to say, into that team, a bit more life, a bit more character. I think for me, however, with Rachel Daly, I think she probably came on a bit too late for me. But the thing is there is that bit of dilemma of the 3 fantastic strikers. Who do you play? Who do you drop? And people have been calling about why not play 2 strikers up top. I don't know if that would personally work for me, just based on how we played. But I just think there's so much talent, especially in that role. I don't think too much can be really done in the last 15 minutes. At least give 20 to 25 minutes to let her have that bit, let her try and get some more shots on target, try and see if she can get a goal, because Rachel Daly, she's a top goal scorer and she can play in absolutely any position, anywhere she can play. I think she's one of the best players about right now based on versatility.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of strange because we're obviously so used to seeing Serena make decisions really quickly as well, sometimes at halftime, sometimes 5 minutes after. But Lauren Hemp is one of my favourite England players, but she's always so, I feel overused with England. She's the one that doesn't come off. So when she did, I was like, hang on, what's she coming off? What's this all about? Why is this isn't in the sub my brain was registering? And I did actually think about the potential of the 2 up front at that time, just trying to get my head around it. But yeah, I mean, it's like you say, it's they were so dangerous as well sometimes that I don't think we could have really risked too much in that game, or tried to just throw all in the attack. And with them being so quick in their attacks, I don't think we could have risked it. So I don't think there's much Serena really could have done, but it will be interesting in the next couple of games to see, once things settle a little bit, who from the subs does get used and where, and watch us sort of settle into this tournament a bit more.
I was obviously, as Matt said, I was really excited when Rachel Daly came on. I think it wasn't enough time for Rachel Daly. I think also we might have needed to change the way we played, because if you look at the way Russo plays, she plays a lot deeper than Rachel Daly does. Rachel Daly lets the ball fed into her, then she can actually take her shots. But again, as Maisy said earlier, that with Chloe Kelly on one side and Lauren James on the other, they more so Chloe Kelly. She's not that player that's going to assist, and I think that's something we are slightly missing for both of our strikers at the moment.
Round up the Haiti game, England had, I'm going to get the stat up here when it decides to load, 21 shots overall, 11 of them going on target, 75% of the possession, 650 passes with an 86% passing accuracy. 7 corners as well. Just to bring up Haiti's numbers, Haiti had 7 shots, 2 of them on target, 25% of the ball possession, 224 of them of passes, 57% of that being being accurate. The difference is England ended up with 2 yellow cards and Haiti only ended up with 1. Haiti also had 3 corners. Just what was your thoughts just going into at the end of the game? Was it sort of a relief, or was it a sort of thinking about what's going to happen next?
Pure worry. The last, it was also, let's just mention Mary Earps' save, because we all say she is obviously the best in the world and stuff, but she had basically nothing to do apart from the first couple of minutes, nothing to do for a long time, and still pulls off such a good save to get her foot down and clear that away. She was, because that could have changed things a lot. That moment, when I was watching it, I was like, oh my god, that's gonna be a goal. That's gonna be a goal. And then she pulls off this great save, and we're still in it. Like I said earlier, it was one of those. It was an enjoyable match to be nervous as well. I didn't think they would actually get a goal and come back into it, but we were so sloppy at sometimes as well, and they were quite dangerous and quite quick. So it wasn't a comfortable end to the game from my point of view, to be fair.
I do see as well what people say when they say if we played a bigger team, we probably if we played a team with a much better attack, etc., we probably would have been punished. Probably that could have potentially been the case, but I think for me is I'd rather, if we're gonna have a sloppy-ish first game, but I win 1-0 and then we go on and then do fantastic in the rest of the group, go into the knockout. I'm not overly worried about it, but I'm glad you mentioned about Mary Earps, because there was 2 saves I thought she made absolutely fantastic. Especially, I think a lot of United fans said she had a bit of a shaky last couple of games of the season, so I think everybody was happy to see Mary back where we've seen her, especially in the first half of the season, because every single game we always chant to her, Mary, Queen of Stops. we sing it every single game to her. So I think she really deserves that crown, that game for sure. So I think Mary was absolutely fantastic. She's one of them where that if you are in trouble, she's there and she will be ready to help no matter what. Like, she's never off the ball, which is something you do want in a goalkeeper. And I think it was probably a lot of people was thinking it was going to be probably a much easier ride than what I expected, because I've seen people say 5, 7, 8, 10-0 for England. So I think people was probably wasn't expecting Haiti to do anything. If you look at it, they didn't, like, in a kind of way, how could I say, they didn't cause us the threat by scoring, but they caused us threats in other areas. And I think now coming into this game, next game, we're gonna look and go, right, let's see what we can do coming into this next game. Hopefully we'll get a bit more tightened down. But nervous, but looking forward to that second game, and hopefully that we get a bit more on our scoring boots now.
I completely agree with both of you there. I think that save that G was referring to, I was having flashbacks to the one that Mary put in the back of the net for United. I can't remember which game it is, Maze. I do apologise, but
Brighton, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. She kind of, I just had flashbacks to that because I watched that game as a neutral, and as much as Mary Epps is an absolutely fantastic keeper, she does have that odd mistake in her, and if it did come in this game, it wouldn't have bothered me as much because we still got to go on to play Denmark and China, but thankfully it didn't. She's just a great keeper all round.
Speaking of Denmark, who we do have next on Friday, that is a 10:30 game on BBC for UK viewers. Unfortunately, I do not have where else.
Matt, I'm really sorry, but it's 9:30 a.m.
Is it 9:30? Yeah, I knew I was going to do that. I do hold my hands up. Apologies. 9:30, because the Haiti game was 10:30. I always get them too confused. So yes, you'll miss the first half for definite if you do that. Yeah, with the game against Denmark, what are you looking forward to? Is there anything you'd like to see change? Anything that would you'd like to see be different? Or do you see that this is potentially get the 3 points, we're qualified, doesn't matter?
They're a good team, aren't they? So it's not going to be an easy game, which is probably a good thing as well, because as much as we want it to be easy, get the goals in, settle in, that's not how football works sometimes. We're not going to have a freak result of 8-0 like we did in our second game of the last tournament. But yeah, I think probably stick with the same 11 at the moment, to be fair. Obviously Rachel Daly could come in, but then you think, what's the other team going to do at that point? Is she going to be as influential? And I just feel like we all need to settle it down, make the subs, make the changes, make 3 changes on 55 minutes if it isn't going well. Like let's just show that we need to arrive now. Like we've had our little wobble and we've got through it, which is the most important thing. And now let's just settle and show all these countries what we're made of. We're European champions. Let's not forget it. And it's the time. We're on the biggest stage right now. The viewing figures, the attendance figures, they're the highest they've ever been. People are interested, so let's just show the world who we are and get the win.
I think for me, the only thing I would actually change, I wouldn't change the starting 11, but I'd actually change the formation to the 4-2-3-1 rather than the 4-3-3. The only reason why I do that is I think Kira, she's been fantastic as the lone defensive midfielder for Barcelona, but I think for me is just for that tiny bit of extra cover, so Georgia is able to trap back that tiny bit, because Georgia, she does have a good tackling her. We've all witnessed it where she's had a massive crunching tackling her, so I think it's just something there to help out Millie, to help out Jess Carter, just because of, especially with Millie coming back from an injury, just that bit of more support for Kira Walsh as well, because I think this is not me to disrespect her when I say this. I think there was that time to time she could have really done with an extra person next to her as a little bit of help, a little bit of cover, and I think for me, in that pivot is probably the best option for us at this moment in time, to bring Tuna a little bit more further forward, because that's where she's played. At Manchester United, she's played in the 10 role all season. That's where she's best at. So I think it'd actually benefit the players more by going to the 4-2-3-1 than not benefit them. And especially knowing that there is some fantastic players there. One who we all know, Harder, who's a sensational player. She's definitely someone who we are gonna need to. How can I say? Isolate.
Contain.
Yeah, contain, isolate. We need to do that coming into the game. So I think changing the formation, I think will probably do us a lot more better too.
No, absolutely, both of you are absolutely spot on. I think all I want now is I want some goals. I want the goals and I want the points. Obviously, I don't mind if it's a penalty, but I just want some open play goals. and then I can sort of settle down on being anxious about this team.
So just before we finish, we'll go on to predictions. So, who wants to go first?
I'm going to go 2-0 England.
So was I.
I'll go one different. I'll go 2-1.
Ooh, that's a good shout. Colonel Harder knows those players at the back, eh?
Oh, you've got me in a tight spot now. What if I have the same feeling about this as well. I think England have mistaken them, and I think Denmark are good enough to isolate that mistake, and it's going to come at the wrong time. But yeah, I probably would go with the 2-1 as well. So that is it for the Lioness review. Where can everyone find you?
Basically, me on Twitter. I think it's at GTrigs now. And yeah, hopefully on a few more of these before the end of the tournament. So thank you again for having me again.
Thank you for having me on as well. I really enjoyed the chat. I have a YouTube channel, Devils United, so you can catch me through there, and my Twitter, which I have changed my username recently, so it's at 2_ MUSC Maze M. It's a long one.
And as always, you can find me at Lottie_AWFC.
And mine is at MattLR28. This has been Vic Akers Wonderland review. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you all for the next one. Goodbye.